So it's Independence Day. I hope everyone takes the time to be with family and to contemplate how lucky we are. We live in the greatest nation the world has ever seen. We are still the last best hope of man on earth, a shining city on a hill. You know, we seem to have lost something in America. I remember growing up, both of our political parties, they fought and had a lot of differences. They even raged against each other. It's nothing new. When you read about our first elections, with the founding fathers, well, they were brutal against each other, in their attack pieces in the newspapers. Really just inflammatory stuff. So that's not new. A lot of times we feel that is new, but it's really not. But when I was growing up, and then, and surely some of you have noticed the same thing, both sides of the debates, both sides shared a common principle. Both sides always agreed that America was great because America is good. That America has done more good for mankind than any other nation known to mankind. This is a principle that all Americans in the aggregate seem to agree with for the most part. But now it sometimes seems that some believe America is no good at all, that America does not merit our reverence. Obviously, in this discussion, the most cited iniquity of America is the sin of slavery. And slavery was, and still is today, a sin. But when we say the greatest nation, when we say that America is the greatest nation, this term needs to be understood. The very term greatest is a comparative term. So, no, we're not saying the word perfect. We're saying compared to other nations, through many lines of test, America is the greatest. All nations dealt with slavery, the horrific nature of slavery. Sometimes we look back to history with a lens of our moral code as we know it today. And the problem with that is that lens has been made possible by the very people we are judging from our past. What I mean to say is that sometimes we disregard what the world was like for thousands of years. The institution of slavery has been around since biblical times and a way of life in virtually every society documented in history. People were born into these institutions, and in an amazing turn of events, mostly during the Enlightenment period, and Christians, such as the Quakers, started to wake up and fight against the horrific moral outrage of slavery. Even those very founding forefathers who were born into it. George Washington freed his slaves at the end of his life, spoke against it. Jefferson tried to change laws in Virginia to make it possible for Virginians to free their slaves. He too became fully against the practice, even though he was born into this evil institution himself and owned slaves. The Declaration of Independence, Jefferson's original draft, spoke out against the slave trade. Now, obviously, there was debate with the southern colonies. It was this declaration and subsequent constitution that ushered in, over time, the abolition of slavery in America. So whether it be Frederick Douglass, who was a slave and freed himself, who embraced the Declaration of Independence, embraced the Constitution as anti-slavery documents, or MLK, who referred to it as a promissory note, that the Declaration of Independence was a promissory note. It took a different generation than the Founding Fathers to ensure that that promissory note was cashed in. As a matter of fact, it took a couple different generations. What I'm going to do for this Independence Day episode is read some of that promissory note. I think it's important that we hear some of it. The declaration that changed the world. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.